Hey everybody, it's nutritionist Amy Berger from toitnutrition.com bringing you another video in how to do keto without the crazy. Before I get into today's topic, which is gout, a couple of business items to mention. First of all, we are now well over 10,000 subscribers to this channel. So thank you so much. I'm so honored that you're here. I'm so glad you find this stuff helpful. Feel free to share these videos far and wide, link to my channel as much and as often as you please, tell your friends to subscribe, tell your friends there's somebody talking about keto in a sane, rational, normal way that won't, cause you to take out a second or third mortgage on your house and all that good stuff. Also, before moving on, places where you can meet me in person, and as always I will have links to everything in the notes for this video, so do take a moment to look at those notes. They're not there for nothing. This Saturday, September 21st, I will be in Ottawa. We will be at the Ottawa Hilton Garden Inn, I think, by the airport. So I'll be there, and a whole bunch of other keto and low carb doctors and nutrition people will be there. You can come meet us. It's not too late to get a ticket. I'm recording this on Tuesday, September 17th, so it's only a few days away. It is not too late. September 21st, Saturday in Ottawa. Next month, Saturday, October 12th, I will be in Raleigh, North Carolina. Again, there'll be a link to that in the notes. You can find a place to get tickets. Dr. Westman will be there. Dr. Eric Thorne will be there, keto-friendly cardiologist. Lots of other cool keto and low-carb people will be there. And let me think what else. Oh, I am speaking at Low Carb Houston. Woohoo! I was invited to speak there months ago, and then I didn't see my name on the official speaker list, so I said, oh, I guess they must have forgotten about me, and I didn't want to bug them, so I just said, I guess I'm not speaking. Okay. And then they emailed me to be like, can we have your flight information? We'd like to know your arrangements. And I said, oh, I guess I am speaking. Awesome. So Low Carb Houston, I think it's October 25th-ish. Don't quote me on that. There'll be a link, or you can just search Low Carb Houston 2019. That will come up. It's at University of Houston Clear Lake. Okay, let's talk about gout, shall we? No makeup, no notes. So who knows what direction this is going to go in. Hopefully I won't forget anything important. However, I do have the single most important thing, which is the coffee. So if I have coffee, I can handle anything, makeup or not, notes or not. And this is from the Circle K down the street. I don't know if you guys have Circle K where you are. It's just one of those sort of gas station convenience stores like a 7-Eleven or a Wawa or anything like that. Circle K happens to have really good coffee because they have these little machines where it's like a touch screen and you press what you want, you press the size. They have 3 or 4 different flavors, and the coffee beans are ground right there before the water pours through your cup. So it's not like sitting in this urn where it's sitting there all day getting all sludgy and gross. Prepared fresh. And I have no affiliate relationship with Circle K. I'm just sharing with you cool stuff. I'm addicted to coffee, and I'm not a snob about it. I have zero problem going into Circle K getting gas station coffee. And I do reuse these little sticks that you can find at Starbucks, or there's a lot of other coffee shops that have them now. And you stick them in the little drink hole, and it's great for when you're in your car, because if you hit a bump or a pothole or something, you don't want that coffee spilling all over the place. This kind of plugs up that hole. And I actually use it all the time just because I find it keeps my coffee hot longer, right? When you don't have steam escaping through that hole all the time, it stays hot. I do prefer my coffee hot. I am not a snob, but I prefer it hot. I will drink it lukewarm. I'll drink it cold, but I prefer it hot. Even in the dead of summer, it's like 87 degrees right now in North Carolina. I still prefer hot coffee over iced. Every now and then I do get in the mood for an iced coffee, and I get it, but usually even when it's hot as HELL out there, I still want hot coffee. And I reuse this. Plastic, this thing never dies. I mean, I've probably used this like a zillion times. I have 3 or 4 of them in every backpack I own, every purse, so I'm never without one. Okay, who cares about coffee, Amy? Shut up. Let's talk about gout. I mentioned in a previous video, in fact, I think it was the previous one, the one I did just before this, where I talked about insulin. I think that I said the word gout a few times, and I mentioned that gout is one of these conditions that is tied to chronically high insulin, right? And again, to emphasize, this is chronically high insulin even when your blood sugar is normal. So we're not talking about people with diabetes or pre-diabetes. We're talking about people that have chronically high insulin. Now, where do I start? Let me take a couple steps back to make sure I don't miss anything, and I try to do this in an orderly way. And the reason I have no notes is because if I don't make notes, the faster I can get videos out to you, right? If I don't even bother to put makeup on, then I can, all right, I'm gonna go home and make a video. So on my way home, stopped at the Circle K, sat down to make a vid. Okay, if you have gout or know somebody who does, you are probably aware that the main recommendation you get when you have gout is to avoid or drastically reduce your consumption of red meat, seafood and shellfish, and alcohol. And the reason they say this is because gout results from the buildup in the body of something called uric acid. And this uric acid, I'll talk about where it comes from in a minute, but uric acid builds up in the blood, and when it builds up, it can precipitate, solidify into crystals, and these uric acid crystals lodge themselves in your joints. For some reason, I don't know why, for some reason, the big toe seems to be the most affected, right? Anytime you read anything about gout, or if you see like an image kind of depicting gout, they always show a big red inflamed big toe. But the big toe is not the only thing affected. You can have these uric acid crystals pretty much lodge anywhere. And the reason that you are generally advised to avoid those particular foods or beverages that I mentioned when you have gout is because these foods, so uric acid is a purine. And a purine is just a nitrogen-containing compound of a certain biochemical structure. And two other purines are actually part of our DNA, embedded in every single cell we have, every single molecule of DNA, right? You know that movie Gattaca? Because the base pairs in DNA, you might remember this from high school biology class or something. It's GATC, guanine, adenine, thymine, and cytosine, if I remember right. Just the names of the base pairs that literally make the physical structure of DNA. Two of those they have this purine structure. But there's a lot of foods that are high in purines. Shellfish is very, very high in purines. Red meat has some, but what's especially high in purines in animal foods are organ meat, especially liver and kidneys. So, all of you chowing down and gorging on your beef kidneys might want to lay that off. No, just kidding, because nobody is eating frickin' kidney, right? There are vegetable foods and plant foods that have purines. It's not exclusive to the animal kingdom. I think oats are very high, peas are very high, beer is very high. And I don't know that it has to do with the protein content necessarily, because, purines are a nitrogen-containing compound. The point is, meat and animal foods are not the only things that are high in purines. But so that's why you're generally advised to cut back on some of those foods, because if those foods contain more purines and purines get broken down into uric acid, I might have forgotten to say that major point, purines are metabolized into uric acid. Well, if you consume fewer high purine foods, you're going to have less uric acid building up, at least in theory, right? Okay, great. There's a couple of problems with this. First of all, uric acid, and one more step back. I don't think you can have gout without high uric acid, but you can have high uric acid and not have gout. So if you've ever had a blood test and you have elevated uric acid, or maybe you even have a history, a pattern of elevated uric acid, but you've never had a gout attack in your life, then you don't have gout. Your body is either overproducing or retaining, holding on to uric acid for some other reason. And so like I said, I don't think you can have gout without the high uric acid, but you can have high uric acid without gout. And I think the reason that is because uric acid doesn't exist solely to give people gout attacks or flares. Uric acid is actually an antioxidant. I know we always think of things like vitamin C or vitamin E as antioxidants, or like resveratrol and whatever, curcumin, all these other things we get from foods and spices, but your body makes antioxidants endogenously, in-house, on the inside. We make glutathione, right? The body's master antioxidant. We make uric acid. We make it. If this, just like cholesterol, right? If uric acid was a toxic poison, your own body wouldn't synthesize it. So don't be scared if you have high uric acid. If you have gout, now we have something to talk about. So having established that uric acid is an essential molecule. I mean, as far as I know, it's essential. We need it for various purposes in the body. If it plays a role, we don't want no uric acid, right? We don't want a diet or a medication that's going to like massively depress uric acid levels or inhibit uric acid synthesis. What we want to find out if we have gout is why the uric acid level is building up. Why isn't the uric acid level being maintained at normal where it's supposed to be? Well, the thing responsible for filtering out excess uric acid, that's your kidneys. So rather than just saying, oh, my uric acid is high, let me do something about this, give me a drug, or what can I do? We need to go to the root cause, right? Anytime there's a medical problem or something that seems like an imbalance or something is dysfunctioning, there's always a reason. Stuff just doesn't happen just 'cause, right? There's what's going on? What is the mechanism? What is the problem? Why is my body building up all this uric acid? And let me fix that. In the vast majority of people who have gout, the problem is that the kidneys are not filtering that uric acid out and excreting it properly, so the body's hanging on to it. It's not so much that the body's producing too much of it, it's really that your body is not getting rid of it properly. Why is this happening, right? We always want to dig why. Okay, my uric acid is building up because my kidneys aren't filtering it out. Why aren't my kidneys filtering it out? Guess what, folks, friends, viewers, followers, whatever you want to call yourselves? Guess what? Guess what inhibits the excretion or the kidney's ability to filter out the uric acid? Guess what? You get one guess. It's a hormone and it starts with I. It's insulin. If you have chronically high insulin, your kidneys will not be able to get rid of that uric acid. And it's not that it's going to like not get rid of any of it, but it's going to be inhibited. It's going to your kidneys are going to be able to filter out less. Therefore, uric acid is going to build up in the body. So, would you want to stop eating things that are nutritious off the charts? Do you want to stop eating beef or pork or lamb or shellfish? Things that are absolutely loaded with zinc, copper, iron, B12, iodine, selenium. These things are nature's multivitamins. Do you want to stop eating those, or do you want to correct the problem that's causing the buildup of the uric acid that's coming from those purine-rich foods? I know which one I would choose. Now, the funny thing is, let me mention here before I forget. Again, in the notes, look at the notes. I'm going to post a link to a very detailed article I wrote about gout for ketodietapp.com, I think it's called. My friend Martina Slayarova has a really great website. Amazing cookbook author, but I've written a lot of articles for her website. And this is one of them. Really top to bottom, everything you could want to know about gout and how it relates to chronically high insulin and metabolic syndrome. So I discuss in that article how there's so much overlap between metabolic syndrome and gout, right? And gout, again, just like so many other things, just like type 2 diabetes, just like PCOS, just like hypertension, those of us who don't know any better, like the general public, not you and me, the general public who doesn't know any better, tends to assume that like all these weird, crappy, yucky medical problems that you don't want to have, like gout and high blood pressure, well, that happens to overweight and obese people, right? You're lazy and you're fat and you're greedy and you're a slob, therefore you have gout, therefore you have high blood pressure. No, in case it wasn't clear in my last video, or in case it's not clear in like every blog post I've ever written, that is not how it works. It's not obesity that leads to gout, because not everyone who has gout is overweight, right? I actually have a friend who is about yay big, that might even be too big. He might be about this thick around, and he has raging gout. And you know what? He's a vegetarian. I don't think he went vegetarian because of the gout, but it's always in his mind like, well, good thing I don't eat red meat because of this gout. Never mind the fact that he's drinking Mountain Dew like it's going out of style and sucking down fruit smoothies like there's no tomorrow. We'll get to fructose in a minute with gout, but it's not about the weight. It's not being overweight or obese that causes gout. It's the chronically high insulin. So some people get gout, some people have hypertension, some people get PCOS, some people become obese, some people don't. What else can I say? So that's the connection to insulin. And if you look, like if you Google images for gout or just like do some research on gout, you will often see images come up that are paintings from like the 1700s, 1800s of people with gout, of sort of like early medical depictions of gout. And it's almost always shown as a wealthy looking person, an aristocratic looking person, like, you know, from the 1800s, sort of like you can tell that it looks like a wealthy aristocrat type person. And it's usually, they portray him as being portly. They usually make him look like an overweight man. And he's sitting at a table with meat in front of him. I'm thinking about one specific image where he's holding a fork that has a meatball on it, and there's like a glass of wine on the table too. So he's got the trifecta, right? He's got the red meat, the alcohol, he's overweight, and he's rich. The thing is, back in the day, back in the 17 and 1800s, gout was a rich people disease. Poor people didn't get gout. The reason it's always shown as some type of wealthy aristocrat having gout is because that's who used to get gout centuries ago. But everybody was eating meat, right? I mean, meat, human beings, humankind has been eating meat for millions of years, or at least definitely many, many, many hundreds of thousands of years, right? Granted, we could say that maybe the poor people couldn't afford as much meat as the wealthy people, but the point is, as a race, Homo sapiens have been consuming animal foods and animal flesh for forever, basically, since, you know, we were walking upright and all that. Now, what wealthy people could afford in the 17 and 1800s that poor people couldn't is what? Sugar. Sugar used to be really, really expensive. It was a luxury item. Why? I mean, I won't get into the slave trade, but there was a reason there was so much demand for it among rich people. Why do you think stuff happened that happened? Sugar was very, very expensive. Nobody could afford it except the very wealthy. And those were the people that had gout. Now everybody has gout because you can go to 7-Eleven or you go to your supermarket. A 5-pound bag of sugar goes on sale for like 99 cents, doesn't it? 25 cents a pound. I mean, it's ridiculous. No, that's 20 cents, right? Anyway, that's the math. Sugar is dirt cheap. So now everybody has the luxury of gout attacks, right? So what is the answer? Is the answer to stop eating purine-rich foods? Is the answer to stop eating highly, highly nutritious, healthy, health-promoting meat and shellfish? Or should we correct the problem as to why the uric acid from those purines isn't being excreted the way it's supposed to? Because a healthy functioning body, healthy functioning kidneys get rid of excess uric acid with no problem. We're going to see this exact same issue come up when I do a video about hypertension and sodium retention, but I don't want to get into that too much because I'll forget about the gout stuff. So you can absolutely correct elevated uric acid while still consuming plenty of meat, and we know this because there's scientific literature published on it. I cited in that article I've told you about, in that blog post, there's links to all of these studies. There were two in particular that were really interesting because they were both emphasized as high meat diets or high protein diets. One of them even used the name Atkins. It was an Atkins, they either called it the Atkins diet or an Atkins style diet. So it's higher protein, but guess what it was low in? Carbohydrate. That's what the Atkins diet is. It's a low carb diet. And they did another study, same thing, where it wasn't the Atkins diet, but it was lower. I don't have it in front of me. If I recall correctly, it was 40-30-30. It was 40% carbs, 30% protein, 30% fat. Now, 40% carbs is still high, right? To you and me, that's still high. Compared to what most average Americans or westernized, industrialized peoples are eating today, 40% carbs is relatively low. High compared to what you and I eat, but low compared to like 50-60% that the average people are eating, right? And 30% protein is much higher than most people are eating, much higher as a total percentage of calories. So these people actually ate more protein than they normally eat, including meat. And guess what? Uric acid levels sunk like a stone. Gout attack frequency sunk like a stone. Some of these people went from 3 or more gout flares a month to 0 within weeks. Within weeks of doing what? Eating more protein, not less, but eating much, much less carbohydrate. That's how you get rid of gout. Cut the carbs, because what happens when you cut the carbs? You cut the blood sugar, and when you cut the blood sugar, you cut the insulin. When you get insulin out of the way, insulin is like hammering those kidneys as hard as it can, or get insulin out of the way. Now your kidney's like, oh, cool. Now insulin is out of my dang way. I can just get rid of this uric acid with no problem. Thank you from above. Okay, so let's talk about the fructose and the alcohol. I think the reason people with gout are encouraged to avoid alcohol is because it's either certain kinds of alcohol, like beer, do actually contain high levels of purines. So that's probably why they're advised to avoid it. But it's also that if I might have this wrong, but again, I didn't read my post again. I think that alcohol inhibits the excretion of the uric acid, the way alcohol affects maybe the liver, the kidneys, metabolism in general. Even if you're drinking something that's low in purines, like wine or something, it could inhibit the excretion of purines from other foods. So that's still a problem. Although I have read that wine does not trigger gout flares normally. If I had gout, I might avoid wine just in case. But anyway, the point is, I guess, so alcohol can be a problem. Fructose is a huge problem, right? And listen, when we think about alcohol, if fructose is a problem, and I'll talk about why in a second, but if fructose is a problem, maybe the association between fructose consumption and between alcohol consumption at a gout attack isn't necessarily the alcohol. It's what? What do we put vodka in? What do we put rum in? Orange juice, cranberry juice, blue curacao mix, sour mix, this and that, right? Grenadine, Grand Marnier, all this stuff that is loaded with sugar. I don't know if maybe just taking a shot straight up would have the same effect. Maybe it would, but that could be a confounding factor, right? Is it the alcohol, or is it all the sugar, all the super insulin spiking stuff we mix the alcohol with? Okay, so why is fructose a problem? Fructose, in case you don't know, fructose doesn't affect insulin the same way glucose does, which is why for a long time, and in the uneducated, ignorant circles of nutrition and medicine these days, fructose is still considered a safe sugar for diabetics. There's this brand called 50/50 that it's like a food brand. They make, lower sugar candies and stuff like that, specifically marketed for diabetics, because it's like, I don't know if it's 50/50 fructose and glucose, but it has more fructose and less glucose than most products like that. And in theory, has less of an impact on blood sugar for a diabetic. Okay, well, that's great. Then you can say that diabetics can have all the fruit they want and drink all the juice they want. Clearly, we know this is not true. Clearly, we know this is disastrous advice. And as always, when I say anything about this, remember, I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice. I'm a nutritionist. This is just information for your educational purposes. Taking in that fructose doesn't affect insulin like glucose does. But if you've seen Dr. Robert Lustig's video, I think it's called Sugar, the Bitter Truth, he basically likens fructose to alcohol in the fact that it's a hepatic toxin. It is, I wouldn't go so far as to say fructose is a toxin, but fructose is metabolized exclusively in the liver. The other parts of your body that can handle glucose and do things to glucose do not handle fructose in the same way. Fructose goes right to your liver. Your liver has to either change it to glucose or change it to fat and store it, all kinds of stuff. So the reason fructose is harmful for somebody with gout is not that it spikes your insulin, because it doesn't. I mean, I think it affects it. It just doesn't affect it like glucose does. So it's not the immediate effect on insulin. It's the long-term over time effect. When you overconsume fructose, right, especially if you're on a high carb diet and you're eating it all day long and your liver glycogen is like already full and you're just going to keep packing more and more fructose and more fat from that fructose into the liver, you're probably going to have a major problem with fructose affecting gout somewhere down the line. I don't know that it causes an acute attack. Like if people with gout do eat shellfish or they do drink alcohol, they tend to have a flare-up pretty quickly. I don't know that the same happens with fructose. I think fructose is more of a trigger for gout over time. But if you have gout and you do flare up from fructose, please let me know in the comments. I'm going to start trying to keep up with the comments a little more, just because you guys are taking the time to watch the videos, which I really appreciate. And I want to interact. I want you to know that I care about what you have to say. I care what you think. And I feel like I'm not giving you that signal. I'm not giving you that impression if I don't actually interact with the comments. I can't keep up with all of them. I can't promise I'll see everything, but I do want to try to be a little more interactive because I'm here, I'm alive, I'm a living, breathing person. I'm contactable. If you want to reach me, like I always say, don't leave a question in the comments if it's a really critical question that you need an answer to from me. Send me an email to nutrition@gmail.com. Let me stop and let's get back to gout. So I know several people on low carb or ketogenic diets who have gout, or I should say had gout, and they're doing really, really well. I do know one who's pretty good about the diet, but she does notice if she has alcohol, she flares up. So I think even if you're on a low carb diet, you have to be careful. So I can't guarantee that being on a low carb or ketogenic diet is gonna make your gout go away all the time, no matter what else you eat or drink. However, one warning I do have to give you is that if you have gout, if you are new to a very low carb or ketogenic diet, when you're just starting out, be prepared for your gout to actually get worse, only in the short term. You might trigger some flare-ups in the first couple of weeks, possibly even first couple of months, but over time, those gout attacks are going to become much less. Here's why. The reason you might experience a flare-up when you're brand new to keto is because uric acid competes with ketones for excretion. And you know that if you test your urine for ketones, you have those little test strips, you can measure ketones in your urine. So, and uric acid is excreted in the urine. So let's say you've been on a standard garbage, super high carb diet all your life, and all of a sudden you've gone keto. Carbs are out of your life. Your carb intake is like 20 or 30 total grams or fewer per day, teeny tiny amount of carbs. That's a big shock to your system, right? All of a sudden, out of nowhere, like all of a sudden, after decades and decades of being alive, your body is producing all these ketones that it never had before, except when you were a tiny baby. Babies are all born in ketosis, by the way. That's a separate point. For the first time in many, many years, all of a sudden, your body has all these ketones. You're going to be excreting a lot of those ketones. Well, now, the kidneys are sending out all these ketones through the urine. What's going to happen? It's competing with that uric acid. Ketones are going out, uric acid is getting left behind. That's why you might have that gout flare in the early stages when you're new to keto. And I think this is probably why in the studies that I referred to before, where they did the higher protein, lower carb diet, I would have to look again at the one that specifically said it was Atkins. The other one was not a ketogenic diet. It was only higher protein, low-ish carb. And so I wouldn't expect those people to be in ketosis, so they wouldn't have had that problem with the competition between the ketones and the uric acid. So they probably wouldn't have had a gout flare. So it doesn't surprise me that basically almost immediately on, their gout frequency attack goes down, uric acid levels go down. So, you know, that explains why. So just be prepared for it. Some of the keto doctors I know have like accidentally, inadvertently triggered a gout flare in a patient, but that's how it is. And as long as the person knows, if you know that that's a possibility, you can be prepared for it, you can expect it. And if you want, you really don't have to discontinue gout medication. I'm not a doctor, but this is what I've heard from other, from people who are keto-oriented doctors. You can still take, whether you take allopurinol or you take some other gout medication, you can continue to take that. And then maybe at some point, after you're adjusted to keto or low carb, work with your doctor, your nurse practitioner, whoever, to see if you can maybe reduce the dose over time or stop taking it at some point. But I don't think, when you are brand new to keto, I did a video on this a few months ago about keto and medication. There are certain medications that really need to be discontinued almost immediately or sometimes within days of starting keto. Of course, legalese here, work with your physician to do that. Never change your meds on your own. The gout medication, as far as I know, does not fall into that category where you could have a dangerous situation if you don't adjust it right away. It's something that can be adjusted kind of down the line. What else? So how do gout medications work then? Some of them work by increasing the excretion of uric acid. A lot of them, most of them work by inhibiting the production of the uric acid, by inhibiting the breakdown of purines. I think even allopurinol, which is the most commonly used gout medication, if I'm not mistaken, it inhibits an enzyme called xanthine oxidase. This enzyme is the enzyme that breaks down those purines into uric acid. So if you inhibit that enzyme, you're going to have less uric acid buildup. But you can search for the side effects of allopurinol. It is not benign. It is not without side effects, including increased gout attacks. So it's, like a double-edged sword. I mean, there's really no pharmaceutical drug that I know of that doesn't have any side effects, especially negative, undesirable side effects, right? Some side effects could be good. The ones these medications come with are not that great. So if you can get to a point where you can stop the medication or reduce it with your physician's guidance, then that's great. Let's see, is there anything else I need to say about gout before we move on? I was going to do that thing like in the PCOS post and the post about insulin and men's health where I had the blog post printed out and I just read it. I don't really want to do that much anymore because I think it's disrespectful. I think it's just disrespectful to you as my audience. I'm like, well, I wrote this blog post 6 months ago. I know you don't want to read it, so I'll read it to you. I mean, that's kind of crappy of me, right? But then this is so much more natural. I want to say the back and forth, but it's not really back and forth because you're not there with me live, but just this sort of rapport, if you will, like me trying to talk to you as if you're sitting next to me in my kitchen right now. I just think that's more natural. It's more fun because I'm not reading from the script. I can just say things as they come to me. And also it's longer. If you have read my blog, I know many of you have and many of you just prefer the videos. If you do read my blog, those posts are really long. So as long as my videos are, this is already over 32 minutes, it would be even longer if I was reading that whole post. If you want to read all the details and see how many studies do show that association between metabolic syndrome and insulin and gout, you can read that post. It's in the notes. What else? I'm going to close out now. I think I've said enough about gout for now. If you do want to read my blog, it's toitnutrition.com, and I really consider myself a writer first and a nutritionist second. My undergraduate degree is in creative writing, and my master's degree is in nutrition. So I'm sort of living the dream in that I get to combine the two. I think it's rare that a lot of people actually end up doing something professionally that they actually got education and training in, let alone two things. But I want to let you know that if you want to read my blog posts, my blog is free, of course, but on Patreon, patreon.com/toitnutrition, for $5 a month, if you support me at the $5 a month level, you get early access to blog posts. I just posted one on insulin and the skin. If you have acne, psoriasis, skin tags, acanthosis nigricans, hidradenitis suppurativa, I think that's how you say it, really, really gnarly skin conditions, you are going to want to read that post. I will be doing a video about insulin and the skin soon, but if you can't wait, that post will be live on my blog probably next week, like the week of maybe September 23rd or so, but it's available on Patreon now at the $5 level. So if you support me there, you'll get to read blog posts at least 5 days, if not a week or more, before the general public. So that is fun, and I don't know. Thank you for subscribing, and if you want to do something on Patreon, even you can support me for $2 or $3. There's no extra perk there except my undying gratitude for your generosity. At the $10 a month level, if you are able to swing that, you get my monthly research review, which is I read several papers a month and then I go through what I've learned. Some of it I learned things that are brand new to me, and sometimes I'm reinforcing what I already knew, so I believe it even more strongly, or I believe it for new reasons. Maybe I learn a new mechanism or some sort of new aspect of a biochemical pathway or something that I didn't know about. So the learning never stops. I mean, I say all the time I learn new things about this almost on a daily basis, and that is not an exaggeration. So coming up, we're over 35 minutes now, so I guess that's it. 2itnutrition.com. My email is 2itnutrition@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at the same handle. And oh, big news! So I hope you didn't stop watching here at the end. I am this close to releasing an ebook. An ebook, there will be an option to print on demand. We're going to try to have it on Amazon. So if you are a hard copy guy or gal like I am, and you prefer to have stuff in your hand that you can dog ear and mess around with and highlight, it's about breaking fat loss stalls on keto. With my message of like, keep it simple, here's how to do this without making yourself nuts. I hope to have that out in October, and I'm going to say October 2019 just in case if somebody watches this in 2020, they might think October 2020 and the book is already long since out. So I hope to have that out. Believe me, you won't miss it. When it's out, I will pepper this channel with videos about it. I will drop a hint about it all the time. It'll be on my blog. I'll announce it, but keep an eye out for that because I really, the whole thing is written. It's basically done. It's with my designer now. I'm a writer. I'm terrible at graphic design, so I let somebody else make it look pretty after I've made it sound pretty with the words. So I will see you next time. I'm going to have videos coming up on, I guess once the blog post is out, I can do the skin video. I want the blog post to be out first. I'll have videos on heart failure. That was a viewer request, something on heart failure. Trying to think of what else. I've been asked to do some like mental health stuff, ADD, ADHD, anxiety, so I'll get to that. And lots of, we'll do keto and migraines, insulin migraines. I could have a channel that was basically nothing but insulin and fill in the blank with your chronic, annoying medical condition of choice, because you can find a link to almost everything and insulin, as we demonstrated here with gout. So I hope this was helpful. If you know someone living with gout who has no clue about any of this, please send them a link to this, because they don't have to be a vegetarian. I mean, they can if they want to, but they don't have to avoid red meat. They don't have to avoid delicious shrimp and scallops and crab and lobster. They might have to cut back if they're a fruit junkie. Those fruit salads, those smoothies, those might have to go. But gout isn't what we think it is. It ain't the meat, folks. It usually never is. So I will see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.